So this podcast is a left brain interface for a right brain representation of nature. But people can't understand the right brain representation itself. So I had to create an interface so that an interface of familiar concepts that people can grab onto. And it's called Wittgentaoism, Hypertheism. And the Wittgen part is about Ludwig Wittgenstein, how a lot of my ideas are hinted at in the work of Ludwig Wittgenstein. And Ludwig Wittgenstein started two opposing philosophical revolutions in the early 1900s. He went to kindergarten with Adolf Hitler. He was in the same class. In fact, some people attribute the Holocaust to Wittgenstein perhaps maybe picking on him in kindergarten because people in academia need something to write about. That's not likely true. But Wittgenstein volunteered for World War I, even though he was part of a rich family, and he served on the front lines. And he was a prisoner of war for 2 years. And for 2 years, he lived in a cage on the ground, and he wrote his first philosophical work, the Tractatus, on little scraps of paper. So, what does he have to do with anything? He was very critical in his notes about the scientific worldview. For example, science is sort of about penetrating, looking for a hidden answer. And he was more interested in the possibilities of phenomena, not phenomena themselves. So, one example of his influence is he used to talk about how scientists used to talk about the bottom of existence as being virtually empty. But he would say that you're taking a macroscopic picture and then imposing it on a microscopic world and presuming they're the same kind of thing. You could see where problems could arise by doing that. You start to think of the microscopic world as something that you can imagine. What I mean by that is you can't really directly see atoms and molecules. You only build up an image of atoms and molecules when you bombard an unresolvable medium with a bunch of electrons or a bunch of photons or a laser. And then that gives you sort of a built-up picture of something you might call the stick figure model of molecules and atoms. So, I am suggesting that the bottom of existence is not composed of anything at all, that it is microscopically unresolvable. And that what we call these patterns of perturbations within these unresolvable mediums is symbolic matter. It's not like a macroscopic object that has structure in it. They're just changes in an unresolvable medium. And the explanations of this unresolvable medium and the characteristics of it, which are all basically the perturbations, come from the world of possibilities. It's not part of existence. He has this nice little quote, the whole modern conception of the world is founded on the illusion that the so-called laws of nature are the explanations of phenomena. What explains the physical laws, the patterns, and also the answer to the question of what is life in space and time lies outside of space and time. It's not part of existence. And these are ideas that are just beyond what any philosopher has really ever talked about, even though they're kind of in the margins of his work, in his kind of side books, his notebooks. They're not part of his everyday or his main texts. So this interface is basically, I use this interface terminology. I'm saying that the world is, or nature is, a puzzle of ideas, and that all ideas are true and false, as other ideas are false and true. Like, this piece fits here but not anywhere else, and other pieces fit other places but not anywhere else. And so ideas like panentheism, pantheism, atheism, Taoism, polytheism, monotheism, probably forgetting something, nihilism, they all have a place in this diagram that I'm talking about, in the puzzle of ideas. So the bottom of existence is not composed of anything at all. And this journey that I'm on started like 14 years ago, 13 years ago. Actually, it's been my entire life, but like 13 years ago, I started noticing that that existence was divided up into scales, and each scale had 3 parts, and then the scales came in pairs. For example, abdomen, thorax, head. Like, the best example is like any kind of insect. You can see this structure. And then the next scale down is organ system, organ, tissue, and and that makes a pair. And then there's another pair down one level, which is outer cell, nucleus, nucleolus. And you'll notice that on each scale, 2 of the parts are different from the other part. Like the outer cell, the nucleus, and the nucleolus. The outer cell and the nucleus are like these combination of units, and the nucleolus is like a unit. But they're grouped in 2 different ways. Like, it's grouped by kind, like the combination of units versus the unit. But the unit, the nucleolus, and the nucleus are also grouped in relation to the outer cell. So it's like 2 and 1 or 1 and 2. It's grouped in both ways. No possibilities are being left out. So the next scale down that it's paired with is the modified tertiary structure of a protein, which is built into a quaternary structure, a combination of these tertiary structures that are modified, and that's part of a network that's all functional. And then that makes a pair. And then, like, the next scale down is primary, secondary, and tertiary folding. And then the next scale down is exon gene and the promoter sites for the gene. And you can see that there's 3 pairs, and those 3 pairs of scales form a hyperscale, the 3 parts of a hyperscale. And then there's 6 hyperscales, and those are pairs, and they're part of a superscale, 3 parts of a superscale. And it forms this 3 of 2 of 3 of 2 of 3 of 2 structure, and that's because it complements a 2 of 3 of 2 of 3 of 2 of 3 coordinate system, or system of coordinate systems at the bottom of existence. That means that an atom has a 2 of 3 coordinate system, meaning it's got a negative and positive for each of 3 perpendicular orientations or dimensions, and that coordinate system is built into what you call the stick figure model that you've seen in all the chemistry textbooks, and that's part of an array. That's the 3rd coordinate system. That's not the only coordinate system in nature. Each scale has different coordinate systems, And then there's a crude coordinate system at the top of existence that I'll get to in other podcasts. I think that's all I want to talk about for now.